Hello, this is Chris Heasley with the Chris Heasley Radio Show, and on today's show, we are going to get into a hornet's nest of an issue, which is the Cy-Fair ISD coming elections, the Cy-Fair Independent School District coming elections, and these school board elections in Texas are really something. I mean, for some reason, the fight in school board elections is greater than any elections of any type of elections in the state of Texas. They're small level, they're local, and they get really there's a real fight with these school board elections, and it's certainly happened in the Cy-Fair Independent School District, and we have two ladies on today to talk about it. And we're going to get into all of it. We're going to present both sides. There's been on this episode, I have received a large number of texts that are I will say critiquing my two guests today. More than that, pretty harsh words for my two guests that are on today. So we're going to go over that. We're getting all this stuff out here and just find out what the truth is. And so I'm looking forward to it. Today's show we have Natalie Blasingame.
That's right,
correct.
Natalie Blasingame.
And you are a school board trustee, currently in position 5, and you are also the vice president on the school board for the Cy-Fair Independent School District. Is
That's
that
right.
correct?
Yep, I've been serving for the last 4 years, and we're a large district, actually third largest in the state of Texas. We used to have 119,000 students. Right this year, we're coming in at 117,000 students.
Wow.
And we encompass the large unincorporated Harris County area in the Northwest.
Wow. And what are you currently running for?
Well, I'm running for re-election to the school board, and I'm actually running in position 6 this time. We had a forum process with local precinct chairs who really watch the work closely in the local governance, and they selected some candidates to run, and there were 3 of us. And so even though I was in position 5, I felt like I lined up better to run in position 6, which unfortunately pitted me against my colleague currently on the board. And so I'm running for position 6 against a colleague and also against some leftists.
And a well-established name, I would say, in Cypress.
Yeah, I think we came in at the same time, elected at the same time, president and vice president.
We're going to talk about all that in just a second.
Awesome.
Yeah. And we also have Sandra Sosa Bramble, and you are the president of the Cypress Republicans.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
And you are pretty much really creating a movement in Cypress that I think maybe even will be bleeding into Houston for conservative, family-oriented values in that area. Is that correct?
Our club is. Yeah, we have an amazing team of men and women who are working very, very hard to turn Harris County red.
Very good. That would be an incredible achievement, and something that the Texas Democrats, are not going to give up lightly. So. The battle coming ahead is going to be a considerable one. It's quite amazing. So let's get into Cy-Fair Independent School District. Everyone should know that Cypress, Texas, is pretty much the conservative area of the greater Houston area. It's considerably conservative. If you would think that if it's conservative that there would be some unity in that school board, but it is actually quite a tumultuous school board at this point in time. Is that correct?
I would say yes. I mean, there are principles that I would call conservative, and those don't change for me. And so if we were running along those principles, then I would say we would all be in unity. But unfortunately, when you get into the role of school board trustee, there's a lot of factors that start to come at you in your decision making, and a lot of efforts, a lot of organizations, a lot of people that will really try to work on you to keep the status quo. And so I would say that the principles never shifted, but some people's behavior moved more towards the status quo. And for example, if you're a Republican or a conservative, you don't believe in raising taxes. But our board, 5 people voted to raise taxes this year. If you're a true conservative, you're concerned about government-funded lobbying or the organization called Texas Association of School Boards. It's a group that is really a monopoly on training of school boards, and it really tames the school board into being a team of 8 where the school board no longer questions the superintendent or the administration, but they just go along to get along and they get rewarded. In fact, CFISD got Board of the Year one year because it was doing such a good job of the superintendent and the board, just doing everything in unison and voting together and really not causing any ruckus. And so TASB also has been, brings in sessions in the past, and the law actually has shifted some of what they can do now, but they would bring in things like the ACLU, or they could bring in just leftist organizations to train school boards. And then I even sat in a session. I tried TASB, and I could have another whole show for you about that. But I sat in a session where our conservative legislators in Texas had just slogged through a legislative session, passed a bill, and I sat in a session where a law firm was training me how to go around the law. And so TASB is the only game in town where all school boards will belong to. But we pay money, taxpayer money, to that organization. And so I say all that because I also did not vote. We have been in protest as a conservative board. We did not fill a director position. And we had that because we're a large district. So being the third largest, we had an automatic director position. It sat as a statement. And unfortunately, my colleagues voted to fill that director position. And actually, not just that. They also voted for, we have a colleague who is more left on every issue. It's obvious. I'm not saying that because you can watch every board meeting online and see how people vote when they defend, pornographic or highly sexual books, when they defend, other leftist causes. And they sent that colleague, they all raised their hand to vote for her to go to the Legislative Advisory Council, which means that the representatives from school boards go there to set the legislative priority for school boards in Austin. And so to me, that's definitely not a conservative principle to send people who don't support our views off to represent us in legislative action in the state.
Okay, so real quick, if we can jump back here. The Cy-Fair Independent School District has 7 seats, correct? 7, right? And it's comprised of essentially 6 conservatives and 1 lefty. Is that right?
The terms are relative, but when we were elected, what we all raised our hand to say, I'm a Christian conservative. So of the 7 on the board, 6 people ran and got support from organizations like Sandra's and from precinct chairs and other Christian conservatives. But I wouldn't say we looked that way. But yes, 6 people were elected as Christian conservatives, and 1 was elected. We split the vote. We had a group of precinct chairs, and hey, it's people's rights. But we had worked to not split the vote by having a forum process, but they also went against the forum, split the vote, and so that's how we have 1 position who's not a Christian conservative.
Okay, and Scott Henry was one of the 7 people elected, correct?
Okay, so we run in cycles because you have 4 and 3 so that you keep some stability on the board. So our policy has a 4-year term. Scott, myself, and Lucas Scanlon were elected in 2021. And then in 2023, we had 4 people elected, and that included Christine Kalmbach, Todd LeCompte, Justin Ray, and then Julie Heineman was previously on the board and got reelected, and she was on the other slate.
Okay, of the 7 people, who is the one that it is not considered the Christian conservative?
Yeah, she didn't run as a Christian conservative and doesn't vote that way, and that's Julie Heineman.
Julie Heineman.
Yes.
Okay. And you are currently running against Scott Henry for your position, and he's also the president. So it's the president versus the vice president running against one another.
Unfortunately, that's true.
Okay.
Yes.
And you and him have had some ideological differences. Is that correct?
Yeah, we worked well together for a while, but Scott went left on me. That's all I can say. And so, yes, I don't think we should raise taxes. I don't think we should be in an organization like TASB because they tame school boards into submission. They say it's all, and that's exactly what has happened. If you watch the last board meetings, you'll see that there's a vote with the administration,
okay,
don't ask questions.
1 second. Okay,
Yeah.
So first let's talk about the first thing.
Perfect.
Raising taxes.
Yeah.
Give me a description. Why is there even a need to raise taxes at this point in Cypress School District?
Okay, so that's a loaded question. I'll give you the short version. We have, we've been running a deficit budget for couple of years.
How big of a deficit? Give me the numbers, please.
$50 million this year.
We're
a
the revenue
$1.2 billion entity each year.
You're a $1.2 billion entity.
Correct.
And you're $50 million in the hole.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, in the hole. So we have, this year was also deficit budget. There was a time where ESSER dollars came in because of COVID. So a lot of school districts had money that was spent and, could spend some money in those years, actually more than I've ever seen in 30 years in education. But our last administration.
If I may ask, how many employees in Cypher ISD?
Wow. 12,000 maybe?
12,000?
Yeah,
And how many students again?
Fact check me on that one.
How many students again?
117,000 this year.
Okay, and a $50 million deficit. Okay,
Yes.
Please keep going.
Yeah, so basically they left, and we do have a fund balance, and that's something that there's a requirement to have a certain number of months of reserves, just because you could have when your state dollars start to roll in and that kind of stuff. But we had a pretty healthy one while we were a fast growth district. And so we had a fund balance. And the last couple of years we pulled from fund balance to make our budget balance. But that's not going to happen. We're slowing down in our growth.
Okay, so you had a fund to pull from to cover your deficit.
Yes.
But that's gone.
Yes.
So now we are sinking. The ship is sinking.
Now we're going to have to pull in our belt straps and figure out what really matters for our kids and what is luxury.
And what the school board decided was the right thing to do was to raise taxes.
1 year tax doesn't matter, it's taxes. So unfortunately, in order to, with the crisis of the budget, and that could have been predicted, but I think it was really to put it on this conservative board, unfortunately. I think there were some, we upset the apple cart when we got elected, and then when we got elected again, there's people who thought it was a lock, right? 17, 19, and 21-year incumbents. And so it could have been purposeful, but there was decisions made and recommended to cut bus service as for families, and that was very bad decision because of the fact that it was poorly communicated to families. So then there was a decision made. I kept pushing for buses to be reinstated from the dais, and I could not even get it on the agenda.
Okay, may I ask a question? I'm sorry, just to jump back
yeah.
one more time, please. As I understand it, the budget issue, this deficit, was an issue from the previous administration, the previous school board. And then this new school board, comprised of 6 conservatives, 1 lefty, they were the first ones to actually try to tackle the issue to their credit. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to tackle it. There's
Right.
no way the money's not there.
Okay.
So yes, and the way it was tackled was to cut, to look through and see what kind of things could be cut. A lot of feedback from administration. They talked with principals. They talked with committees. They had a local committee. And so, yes, some cuts were made. Good news is that you'll hear from the other people on the left that are running that we fired librarians. No one was fired. But a decision that was recommended to the board by the administration was to have a librarian half and half between 2 campuses. And then people who wouldn't stay in their position were offered positions in our district. But that's a big deal because the library game, those books, that's a kind of a war front in education right now. So we didn't fire librarians, but librarians were cut by half.
Okay, and then what was the point of the buses? What happened with the buses?
Oh, very sad. Truth is, it's an underfund. I will give credit to the fact that it's a very underfunded function from the state. Mm-hmm. It's never been. The amount of reimbursement per the cost to run buses for kids is not. And kids by the law are entitled if they're 2 miles or more from their school. But Cy-Fair had a habit of busing everyone. It didn't matter how. And then there was a budget. There was a critical shortage of bus drivers, it turns out, and districts have been in a war for talent for a long time, and keep driving up the price per. But kids are also, there's a lot more discipline after COVID, right? So it's really hard to attract those people into a bus driver position. So I think it was a convenient thing to cut because they couldn't fill their bus driver positions, and it left families in the lurch. We did not communicate until right before school started to let families know. And hey, I was a single mom raising a daughter in school. I couldn't have afforded, my whole balancing act relied upon what I knew her transportation was. And so it was very wrong, but even worse than that, they did not carefully figure out dangerous routes. So we passed a policy that on the surface looked like it took care of dangerous routes, but right away I had families calling me. I went to walk with them. I walked 2 miles in ditches on Cypress, North Houston, which is a road that is like 4 lanes, no protection, and people fly down that road because it's kind of a wide road and there aren't so basically we left kids in danger, and it was because of that recommendation that came from the administration. So that was an excuse for my colleagues to vote for a tax increase, but unfortunately the tax increase isn't a permanent solution. It was a one-year tax increase, and it was based upon the fact that we'd had a disaster. We were able to raise like a disaster penny or something. And so it's tax raising. And so now I'm going to hire and create more infrastructure. But that wasn't done until the next year. We were able to restore bus service this year. But again, we'll have to address our budget, $50 million shortfall.
Okay, real quick. So they voted to raise taxes, and okay, the school board, you voted against the choice to propose raising taxes, correct?
I did. Yes.
Okay. What was the breakdown on who voted which way?
Well, we have a very interesting pattern that has formed. Once we ran the second election and the last crew came in, there were kind of jockeying for, and it takes 4 votes. And so we have, we'll call it the bromance, I'll call it. That's give you a little bit of, I'm sure they'll give you some feedback on that. Scott and Justin Ray and Lucas Scanlon and Todd LeCompte. And if you look at our board, it's actually very unfortunate. It happened that Scott put all the men on the left and the women on the right. So the block of 4 down there started to vote together. And so as soon as you have a block of 4, you can do what you want. And so they weren't listening to the Christian conservatives anymore. They were doing whatever they felt like they could do or needed to do.
If you're not, what was your solution? If you're not going to raise taxes, how are you going to cover the $50 million deficit?
We have to go into forensic audit, and we have to find where the money is. And I'm going to tell you, I have ideas on two ways that I'll talk to you about it. It could either be waste or it could be fraud, right, or corruption. And so we have to tease those things out. So there are redundancies in the system. We do like, and look, I was a principal, and I had a very low-performing school in Spring Branch, and I know what it took. I wanted every person I could get to do interventions. I wanted people to coach my teachers how to teach better. So there are a lot of positions in schools that are not classroom teachers, and we need them. I wanted them as a principal, but we have to look somewhere when you're in a $50 million, and worse now because we're down 2,000 kids. It's going to be even more deficit than it was. So we need to look at every position in a school and say, and almost it's like zero-based budgeting. Let's look at it. The law requires that you have a teacher for every 22 kids in elementary, a little bit higher in secondary. The law requires you have a principal, and the law requires that you have a superintendent. Everything else is a question. Definitely the finances have to have some management because you must report to the state, right? So there's roles that are critical. But in the end, we pare it down. What are those things that are essential? And then we do a forensic audit of where we're spending money. For example, we have some facilities like the Berry Center and the VPAC. Do we do custodial? Do you have the whole crews for those people with an org chart that has leadership on it? Do you have others, like where are there redundancies in the system? There's also, and I'll tell you, when you go block walking, you hear a bunch. So I've been knocking on doors for weeks. People talk about the sidewalk that was laid, and then they see it was torn up a year later for another sidewalk to be laid. We'll talk about turf fields that were pulled up for sprinkler system or put back down, pulled up. So I think there's places where we're not super careful with the taxpayers' dollars. Often we'll say the bond program, the voters voted, so you must do it. But I'm afraid that we don't have an eye to savings. And I'll even say it could be, right now, the bonds, there's your operating budget and there's your bonds. And so the whole bond side, we can maybe have another conversation because that one I question, actually I started questioning corruption, and then that's when I started getting attacked for corruption, which led to tape conversations. So
okay, let's tell me about that.
Should we go there? Okay,
yeah.
So did I answer your question as far as
Yes.
the finances, the budget? A forensic audit and one that has a digital footprint to make sure no one changes records. We just need to go in and understand how the money is spent in the school district. Unfortunately, before I ever got to the board, I had people trying to decide if I should say names or not. There you go. I had a very involved community member who had me come to a meeting with another sitting board member now. They weren't a board member then. And the person was suggesting someone in our system was dirty in the construction area. And look, we built a ton of schools. We have 96 campuses. So we built a lot over time. We grew fast. And so I didn't know what to do with that. Then I started hearing things like that there were millions of dollars in contracts that I had not seen. And this is after I've been serving about 9-10 months on the board. And it's not for the children. And I started getting feedback in places, but I did not know what to do with the information. So about a year in, we've got our mid-year financial report given to us at the board meeting. And so I thought this is a great time to ask some questions, right? And so I asked if I could have, actually I did my homework. How could there be budget if we're required to sign everything? It shifted this year to 100,000 at the legislature, but it was 50,000. We signed any contract over 50,000 or approved it at the board. So I'm like, how could there be a contract that we haven't approved? And so the only thing would have been maybe continuing contracts, right? And so those are ones where maybe it had a 5-year term and we hadn't seen it yet. So I asked from the dais in December if I could have a copy of the continuing contracts. Didn't get it. And remember, at this point, we're not a majority board. At this point, we're this little minority of 3 on the board, and we're being played. It's easy. Once you got 4, like I said. So we were just trying to be a voice of the wilderness.
You have 4 that are sort of in lockstep.
Yes, we had
And
4
now
that were the old guard, and then the 3 of us came in. And so asked again in January from the dais. And you have a lot of rights as an individual trustee. We're really not the board until we're at the board meeting. But each trustee has the right by Texas Education Code. And actually, that's my biggest issue, like with TASB we talked about. We don't get trained in the code. The code says you have the right to get the information you need to govern and be a representative of your community. So I asked in January, I asked again in February. And by this point, I have gotten no information about the contracts. And that happened to be timed with when we moved into a new administration building. So I went up there with some plans and to get some rodeo tickets for our kids. And I asked that day, I said, I must have my list of my contracts. Oh, it's been hard to put together. We have these contracts. And so they gave me a list. There was a lot of flailing of arms because the unfortunate thing about the new building that's so fancy, very fancy, Class A finishes, they have glass walls in the offices. So they're in there. This is the man who was in charge of building buildings, the chief person in charge of that whole program of facilities and construction, flailing arms about these contracts. They give me some copy of something that they improved a little bit later. And then that gentleman actually, he announced, he's no longer there. He announced that he was resigning or retiring later that year. But it just left me with a lot of questions about the
so
contracts.
you heard rumblings about corruption with contracts. And when you tried to go and find out about these suspicions, you were not given any contracts.
I wasn't given them for 3 months, and then I was given something. But then something way more sinister happened.
When you were given something, what does that mean you were given something?
Finally, but I marched up there and said, you will. It was like a little handmade, typed up report where they had to go digging through systems to figure out, to give me the list of contracts. It didn't give me very much confidence, put it that way. We obviously are very sophisticated, sitting in a very expensive building with Class A finishes, and we don't have the software where we can just say, oh, here's your list of contracts.
Did they finally give it to you?
I got a list. What I'd like to see is what it means when we do a forensic audit. Let me see. Is that really the contracts? I don't know.
So what you're saying is you got information and you're not certain that this information is reliable.
Correct. How
Okay.
how can I check, Chris?
And what kind of
Imagine you're me. Like
what kind of contracts are they?
We are so huge. It could be copiers. We build buildings. We have paper supply. We have food we buy. We have, think of what you do to run a school system. You all the materials it would take. You have all the maintenance and custodial supplies. You have.
So you're thinking that there's fat built into all the potentially into a portion of the contracts. There's some I don't know what to say, like some fat to give out.
I don't know. How can I be on the board 4 years and I don't know? When it's my legal responsibility is to understand that.
Right.
So yes.
So a forensic audit needs to be done. Who would do the forensic audit?
There's firms that do that specifically. They do it through with digital resources.
And if you hire a forensic audit, you think there's a reasonable chance that there's enough, lard in there that you can cut the fat out and solve the budget balance problems. So in other words, potentially in Cy-Fair ISD, it is it's a party, right? Where there's looting going on, where everyone's got their hand in the company jar, getting extra cash to pay for things that are not that shouldn't be being paid for.
I think there's also something that actually impacts the entire region, possibly. So some of the contracts, so remember we have $4.3 billion in bond debt. We've been paying bonds. So we have had 2 big bond issues in the system. And I couldn't figure out. I got a call one time. I was actually at an HCC event downtown because I worked previously in HISD. I worked all over town with all our schools. And so someone came up to me and she was asking about any ability to ever get work as an architect in Sci-Fair. So this firm, the gentleman that owns the firm, this group has built buildings for lots of school districts and even HCC, but they've never had the opportunity to even bid and to get anything into Sci-Fair ISD. So again, I'm like, I wonder why. What is that issue? I'm digging, trying to ask the questions. So finally, we get when we got the next group elected and the outgoing president, he ordered an audit of the last 3 construction projects. And so I think as an effort to say, hey, I'm cleaning this thing because let's look at our last 3 projects. And that's finally when Weaver, who is an outside firm that does all our very surface, and in fact, when you see the language in our last audit, when it says basically, we just answer the questions you asked us to, and we can give you no opinion about, you'll be shocked to see how dismissive the language is. It's really just like a little glossy cover sheet, you know what I mean, to say we answered what you asked us to answer with facts. And the facts are not going to be, that's not going to show you what you need to show. That's why a forensic audit is needed. So then they told me then, finally, the rubric that we use to judge which firms can be architects for us, it must have in it a lot of previous relationship with the school district. So in the end, you've spent billions of dollars, literally, with 6, maybe 5, maybe 6. They told me 6 last time at the ad building, at the board meeting, but that's how many architects were able to build buildings for our school district. So that's not competitive. It also gets a little deeper. I ran for the school board before.
Okay, may I repeat then what you're saying? So you're saying that there's a clause in the law that says that in order for you to use an architect, it has to have sort of a legacy of working with the schools. And if it doesn't, it can't be included. And that creates a barrier to entry so that only 5 or 6 architectural firms can be used, which allows them to jack up the price.
Whoa.
Is that what you're saying?
A little correction. It's not a law. So there are procurement laws which say you will have a process, but you create your own rubric within your school district.
It's like a regulational. I don't know what the word is, but it's like a
So,
regulation.
yes,
it's not a law. It's less than a law, but it's a requirement put in by the school board.
It's probably legal as well and financial.
And so it puts that requirement in, which limits your ability to go out and really get a good quote on architectural services.
No, it was a self-imposed by the school district limit. And now suddenly, because we're already built out, I think those groups are, now it's, and also something else happened. When we started limiting bonds now, people can't just put up big old bonds, the voters aren't voting for it. It's shifting behavior. But yes, for all this time in our school district, we created a rubric that only let that many architect firms win. Also, the architect firms supported the elections of those incumbents who were there for 15, 17, and 19 years. So I ran 3 times before I got on the board, and the only time it happened,
Who supported the?
Yes. So the architect firms,
okay.
You can see. So the architect firms, not illegal, but I would say that's questionable ethics, right? You get a principal from your Austin office, a principal from your San Antonio office, a principal from your whatever office. They give you a check just under the threshold of the amount that doesn't have to be reported, but your name has to go, and then you just have to go to LinkedIn, and the person works for firm at Austin and blah, blah, blah. So they would buy into the PAC that supported the elections of the school board members.
So these architectural firms that are really well situated to get these contracts where they have this barrier to entry, they're insulated, they are then contributing to candidates that will continue to support them, and they're doing so just under the amount that has to be reported.
Yes. They also give to the Say Yes to Bonds Fund. So in order to spend money to convince the public to vote for the bonds, your architect firms also help give money to those, and that is citywide. And that's really where the biggest travesty
citywide,
is.
Meaning Houston or Cypress?
I'm going to say let's say the MSA. Because
Metropolitan Statistical Area, the greater Houston area.
So when I first ran, in 2017, I had a consultant. It's all I could afford. Remember, I'm me against the machine. And this gentleman was had been previously a board member in a nice, large suburban school system. He told me, Natalie, the fix is in the regional pricing structure of these buildings. So basically, he said it's a bracket that they compare against each other, and so the comparative for Conroe ISD will be comparing to Cypress Fairbanks ISD, which will be comparing to Katy ISD. So if you drive up that pricing in the one, you drive it up, and so if you only have 5 or 6 groups competing, you don't think they range with each other? You get this one, you get this one, or we're going to drive it up, or we're going to signal. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say
the whole system's being worked.
It is raping the taxpayer across and we're no longer fast growth, so they'll move on from us. And now people can't just pass big bonds. But yes, it's been, and so I asked one day from the dais when we had Weaver there, I said, how much would it cost? What is the price per square foot to build like a building for an oil company on I-10, let's say? And of course, my colleague down the board who ran the bond before that was like, well, schools have to be different. What? Schools do have to be safe for kids, but it was kind of like, well, how dare I ask such a question? That was preposterous. No, I need to know, and I still cannot get that information. Why? What is the pricing comparison? And I will say our beautiful new administration building, my brother, who's passed away now, but he would ask me, Natalie, what are they building up there? It looks like they're building a bomb shelter. Why is that?
Okay, slow down real quick.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I know, too much, right?
No. Well, the people need to know about this. Tell me about the school board administration building from the beginning.
Well, it is very beautiful.
When was it built?
We opened it, that would be 2022.
The 2022, how much did it cost?
Oh, gosh. I need to look it up. I don't want to say wrong, but some 90 million, 60 million.
So the argument coming from the citizens is that the school board went a bit over the top with this while they have budget issues and they're building this elaborate Cy-Fair Independent School District school board building. Am I correct?
Right, and I didn't vote for it because it was voted on and approved before I got on the board. Because a bond program, and that's something also that happens, maybe that's why there's some waste, because the voters vote for this block of projects, right? And so then you're bound, because you told the voters and they voted on it, you're bound to do that. So that may be why a sidewalk that was just poured a couple years before suddenly gets torn up and poured again, because there's this lockstep way of having to do it in the bond. And I don't know if that's even true either. The truth is my source would be TASB, but I don't trust the source. Who's training school board members? Who really is a neutral voice that could say, no, it's not just team of 8. It's not just go along to get along with your administration. And so I don't know. I've been serving for 4 years, and I'm trying to call out corruption, and I don't know how to get the information I need.
So you're coming with these surgical solutions, and the opposition simply wants to spend more, tax more, and you are sort of overturning the apple cart. There's a lot of people making money, and so now you're being attacked.
Yes. Okay. Shocking, right? So right after I started calling out corruption, and then I think it must have been around January, February, I went to Austin because I was testifying around dyslexia because I have a background in schools and in literacy. And so while I was there, the Senate Education Committee was passing a couple of $1 billion for safety, and I was very excited because my daughter had 2 guns in her high school the year before, and I had to fight with the superintendent because as a board member, I didn't even know. I got a letter home, but it was 2 guns, and one day a clap of thunder happened, and my kid, who's 6 foot tall and tough, she swam Alcatraz. She went down in my living room behind an ottoman. I said, what in the world? She said, Mom, I've practiced what I'll do in a school shooting. And she said, I said, my gosh, how often do you think like this? She says, Mom, we think about it all the time in school. Kids are thinking about it. That broke my heart. That worried me because I have a tough kid. She's worried every day about being shot at school. So in Austin, I hear about someone with some weapons detection that uses AI, uses the existing camera system. I see a video, and I won't say which building, but a very famous building in our country. I could tell because I'd taken kids on a field trip there prior to go visit that site. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, this looks amazing. It looks like, and we're about to get all these dollars. So the first thing I do is go back to the district and take it to our superintendent and our chief of police. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Look at this. It's so good because the detection was like amazing, right? It detects weapons. And so I'm innocent. I'm thinking this is like amazing. Have we looked at it? Then I learn a couple things. One is I learned that the chief said we've already been looking at weapons detection. And I was a little weirded out by that too, because AI in our schools, and you haven't talked to the board about it, right? So there's this whole thing that it runs itself and it wants to put the board as a cheerleader team that all agrees with the superintendent and doesn't ask questions, right? So, so I'm like, wow. So I asked this person that I meet and I'll say, hey, will you meet with our chief? They did not like that. But why did they not like
Who's
that?
they?
So, well, facts are the superintendent who's no longer there. We eat normally before our board meetings. He tells me, you're making chief very uncomfortable with your questions. And so I'm like, interesting. But what never did I see coming was the fact that one of my colleagues, now he had supported someone else on the slate, so local people will know what that means. We were still going for 2 more years, right? We had 2 more years on our term. But during that election, he supported a candidate who did not, who split the vote, which is why we don't have 7 Christian conservatives on the board. And so he was a little bit of a wounded duck, and I think he was picked up easily by administration, basically. And I actually, I'll get to why I think that, now I have more facts. I'm saying things that I can prove, okay? Except for when I told you I don't know, because I cannot get regional pricing. I cannot get some of that information. So suddenly I get called into a meeting with my 2 male colleagues that I was elected with, one who I'm running against now, and one who's not running again for reelection. And I'm questioned on my improper vendor relationships. We've always met at other places because 3 can always meet, so it's legal, and we ran together, so we were a team. And that person questions me about improper vendor relationships, and I'm like, what in the world? Where's that coming from? So luckily, everything was clean and above board. But he made the administration investigate me, and they brought down a report.
Who made him do this?
My colleague on the board.
Another school board member?
Yes.
If they're a public official, you should be able to say their name. Well, if you don't want to, fine, that's fine, whatever. But go ahead.
It may become apparent, okay? So they questioned, and so those 2 colleagues of mine were in the room, and I was questioned. And luckily, they saw everything was clean. I was excited. I told them about it. I'm let them meet. They meet. Nothing else. I'm pushing on it, though, because I want it. Then at the same time, we had Uvalde and all that, right? The report finally came out. It took forever. Kids laid on the ground and bled out for an hour. In Uvalde, right? If you had weapons detection on cameras, you would have known exactly where that perpetrator was with his gun. You would have been able to follow him through the building with the camera system on your phone. Sounded really good to me. And Santa Fe, guess what? They would have caught that the night before because those kids brought the guns in the night before and hit them. Those cameras are working 24/7. That would have also likely could have avoided Santa Fe as well. So I'm super excited about the technology. And unfortunately, that's what I got met with. And so now I was accused of being corrupt.
So you're bringing in technologies that would safeguard the school from shooter situations, and you are confronted by your colleagues for having improper vendor relationships and being told that you're making the chief of police feel uncomfortable, the school board chief of police feel uncomfortable, because you're simply bringing these solutions. Why would they do that?
I know, because I think I touched a nerve. When I asked for those contracts for 3 months.
When you asked for the contracts, you wanted to see the school's contracts with different vendors, and the school stalled you. They put you in a stalemate. They wouldn't give you those contracts, and you're asking why.
Right.
So now what you've done is you're bringing change into the school board, into the schools. And now there's all of a sudden a resistance pushing back on you, and it's unexplainable.
Right, because we were Board of the Year from TASB for not asking any questions, and everyone gets along, and everyone's wonderful, and we all vote together. We were rewarded for being a board that gets along with our superintendent. So someone who comes to ask questions is not very welcome. And because I have a large background, look, I've been in schools for 30 years, so
Okay,
there's a
real quick.
lot of background I bring to it. And so... that's not exactly, I'm sure if I was the superintendent, okay, and I remember I've been in the administration. I literally worked in the central administration as an assistant superintendent at HISD. I know how we operate. We want low information to board members because we've got a ton of problems to solve in our school systems, and we don't want board members getting too much information. We just give you enough. We present it also positive. And so I've been a board tamer myself, right? So I know what it's like to tame the board. And unfortunately, so that made me pretty scary, I guess.
And you're saying that there's now a concept out there that there are solutions, AI solutions to tame school boards. So in other words, the powers that be use AI to sort of solve the problems and keep school boards in the dark.
No, I'm not talking about AI at all with that. I'm saying
Okay.
the AI is just some technology that would help us not have guns in school or help us
Okay.
minimize loss of life in a thing. I had to just put that aside because I'm just one board member and we all get one vote, right? And so I pushed on safety, and I pray to God that we have, and I do pray to God every day that we protect our kids in our schools, because I brought something. I wanted us to make moves. We have amazing safety. Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
Like a premier safety plan.
TASB. Say it one more time. What is TASB?
Yeah.
What does the acronym stand for, and what is that organization?
Texas Association of School Boards. And basically, most districts in the whole state belong to it, because it's really the only source we have for school board training, and you're required to have like continuing education credits in this role by law. So you go there for that. We also buy services from TASB. So they became like a one-stop shop, a resource for school boards, right? We buy insurance products from them. TASB has a buy board, so you can do cooperative purchasing. TASB has, you can name it, you can look up, it has different services, right? It takes, it puts on conferences for us so we can go and we can connect with other, school board members. So it also is taxpayer-funded lobbying, because we pay from school dollars to belong to that, and then it goes to the legislature to carry out an agenda. And so a lot of conservatives have a problem with that. And then I told you it started drifting off with the ideological. It started going left, right? And I tried TASB. I actually got elected to the Legislative Advisory Council, and I went to see could it happen, and I realized it's almost like a regression to the mean, right? Like you'll vote in consensus, and then you end up having stuff that isn't very powerful and it didn't clean up the books. Okay, let's see. TASB's been working. We still had these books in our schools that were completely inappropriate for young children. We still had curriculum that was telling kids to not like themselves, not like their country, not like oil, go on about the things. We had a chapter, in fact, that's another whole book, whole show we could do about the curriculum changes. I was definitely vilified for that. But we had a whole chapter on the COVID vaccine being proven science and amazing science and fact. That was going to be in schools for the next, I don't think we'll even have it sorted out of the science by the time those books are old and out of adoption. But the books had stuff in it. And all that has been happening under TASB, guiding school boards to be quiet and sit down. So unfortunately, and I'd even tried to go to TASB with a group of conservatives from some different districts out here in Fort Bend, Lamar Consolidated, Katy, to see could we go there and make any kind of difference. And that's the question that remains. Could TASB, the real crazy thing is we know how Texas is. Texas is pretty conservative, right? So you have all these conservative school boards, and that's all the only option they have of where to go. So it's pretty damaging, I would say, to the cause. Luckily, our legislature came through with a few solid things for schools this year. So that helped us because, for example, dealing with books, we got to so far as we could get while we were still cooperating together in a conservative way, and then we got stymied, and now that came through to clean it up. Even we did a parents' rights policy that I actually proposed to our committee, and we were able to pass a parents' rights policy. So we've done some good work there, but we have to continue to do good work, and we have to do it as Christian conservatives, and we have to do it as conservatives, and we have to have our eye on the ball. Which is that the kids are learning.
Okay, so Sandra, if I may ask, is Cypress Republicans does they have a position on this school board race?
Officially, no. I think most of our members have pretty much decided. We have a very conservative club, and so I would say probably we have 178 members, and I would say probably 95% of them are incredibly conservative. So they have been rather outspoken about where they stand. Most of the people that I have spoken with struggle with the idea of politicians that don't honor their word or that their votes don't match what they have come to our club to preach. And so that's where we stand.
So I have received text messages from different people, regarding the two of you. And they send me articles, and they say things like, for example, that you are a Christian nationalist and that you are a book burner. So, when I hear that stuff, I think it's nonsense, but I want to give you the chance to defend yourself.
Am I a Christian? Absolutely. I have a faith that tells me to love God and love people. And I have loved people well for 30 years in schools. I have been, I have served all It's this Houston. It's a beautifully diverse city. And if I've worked in HISD, A-Leaf, Spring Branch, and now I live out and I represent Cy-Fair. I can tell you I've worked with, I'm not sure how many different backgrounds of faith, and I've done it with love, and I've done it with excellence. And so that's a scary thing. I wonder why. Why is Christian such a scary word? And why is Christian in school such a scary word, right? Why? Why is that? Why are other faiths, come on, let's do it, let's celebrate it, but for Christianity is really shut down, and it is. I'll tell you, that's another whole sideline we can go on, but having worked in schools for 30 years, it's definitely a place where you cannot express faith is very scary for teachers and school employees, just know. But the nationalist part, I'm an immigrant. I'm a first-generation immigrant to this country. I could not think of a better place to live. I've lived other places. I've traveled other places. I have stayed and done healthcare projects and latrine projects in Latin American countries to learn Spanish. And there's nothing like the United States of America. So am I proud of this country? Yes. Should we teach kids to be proud? Yes. Should immigrants like me be proud? Yes. So if that's what a Christian and a nationalist is someone who loves God, loves people, and loves their country, then okay. That's not what they mean. They're trying to shame me in my Christianity, and they're trying to act like my allegiance to my nation is something I should be more have allegiance to, like some global agenda or some global state of things, right? So it's very interesting because that's a clever strategy. And the first time I ever heard it was actually when we were running. A gentleman went up to the microphone at the board meeting while I was in the crowd, not at the dais, and he called these Christian nationalists, and I was like, what's that? And then right away I knew we were going to win because...
Well, Sandra, what do you think? Do you think that the people of Cy-Fair are going to reject to her being called a Christian nationalist or a book burner? I mean, how does that go over in Cypress, Texas?
Well, I think that what is happening is, I mentioned earlier, when we read an article and somebody gets called out as a Christian nationalist, I'm actually grateful for it because it's like self-identifying. This person is telling us, I'm looking at this from the viewpoint of far left. And so you immediately take whatever article or commentary and you realize who the source is, what their intent is. And so you give it less value.
All right, well, ladies, I got a question for both of you. Scott Henry is the school board president, and he's a lifetime conservative. Why should Natalie be running against Scott Henry when he is a household name in Cypress and he's already the school board president? Why would you run against him? I want to start with you, Sandra. Why do you think that? What do you think about this race?
I wish it wasn't happening.
Mm-hmm.
I have been privy to a lot of conversations regarding this very topic, and I think most of the people in Cypress have taken either side to an extreme. But I think that what has drawn the line between the two has been the integrity issue, has been the Christianity issue.
Okay, what Christianity issue?
Like Natalie was mentioning, she has been, I guess the word is shamed about being a Christian. I guess most of the board has been accused of being a Christian board. Scott has made it quite explicit, quite clear that he is not, and that
he is not what?
I don't know what his personal faith is, but I received a communication from a meet and greet that took place, I guess, about a year and a half or so ago, where he specifically says that he doesn't believe that God should be in schools.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that was where I drew the line.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know that there is quite a few members who have...
Okay. I have that video as well.
Oh.
So I want to play it. Hold on, 1 second. I'll pull back here for a second. But yeah, I want to play it, and then what I want to do is I want to ask you both. I want to just discuss this opinion. But okay, so here's Scott Henry stating his beliefs on the Christian religion in schools. Let's play it now, okay?
You know, we get called Christian nationalists to get my campaign strategies about.
Yep, that's the one.
Put that out. We get called Christian nationalists, but yet I ran on transparency, accountability, bringing respect back to teachers and to parents, and running on the values of our community back in our district. I didn't hear the word Christian in anything I said. In fact, you can go look this up. 10 years ago, my kid, I talked how I didn't want Christianity in anything in the schools. And we differ on that a little bit. To me, it should be agnostic. It really should be. We should really just focus on the things that are important. Did you know that right now, 19% of our curriculum around the state of Texas does not even meet grade level in all our curriculum in the state of Texas? 19%. So that's what we're fighting. We're trying to bring transparency back so you as parents can be more involved. COVID helped that tremendously.
Okay, so
That's the one.
essentially what he's saying is that that he's agnostic towards religion in the schools, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but Christianity should not be in the schools. And then he goes on to make an argument for more academics being in the schools. Mm-hmm. So how is that message? What is your counterpoint to that message?
It's not resonating in Cypress. As you said on your opening statement, Cypress is a very conservative part of town. And most people, and I can speak for the people that are in our club, most people that have spoken to me about this have stated very similar comments about where they stand regarding Christianity and the values that we are so concerned. The last time I was in your show, I mentioned something about the books that the parents are so concerned about in the libraries in the schools in Cypress. And it's because of those beliefs that we are so concerned about that. So.
All right. So it is the Republican Party has endorsed you over Scott Henry. Is that correct?
Correct.
Why?
I would say it's easy. You look at the two things. One is the Republican platform and the goals, and it does not want TASB. It does not want taxation. It does not.
But I think the one thing the reason they don't want TASB is because does Scott Henry want? Is he aligning with TASB?
They filled our director position. The foreman raised their hand and with our leftist colleague to say we're going to fill the director position. And TASB.
What does that mean that we're going to fill the director position?
Because we're a large district, we have an automatic spot, and it's a black eye to TASB because it sits vacant because it belongs to Cy-Fair.
Meaning that you have a director position on TASB,
and our district
and
didn't fill it.
you sort of have. I don't want to like giving them the finger, right? Like, hey, we are so opposed to you that we're not even going to fill our board.
Yeah,
spot.
we need you to make some changes.
But Scott Henry and other people on the board voted to fill that school board, that TASB position.
Correct.
Okay.
And then to put a legislative advisory member there that doesn't vote conservatively.
Okay.
Votes liberally. So, but more than that, so your question was...
Okay, but maybe what he's going to say is, well, we're going to put that person there to persuade TASB to go be more legitimate. I don't know.
Yeah, I hope that would be true. I will say that the governor, lieutenant governor, let's go down the list, have been working to see that can be fixed. And so I'm sure our little member can go and do a great job. But you know what? That'd be amazing if we can go in there and make a change and make that thing actually represent, first of all, train boards to be in Texas Education Code. It turns out not just all the responsibility actually sits on the trustees, and they're one employee they hire, that is the superintendent. And it has been so turned upside down that you end up in a district when Scott's talking, I love it. He's talking about the academic goals, and I'm not sure what it means 19% of the curriculum isn't. What I can say is 20% of the kids, or 13,000 kids, do not read on grade level. So we were the largest A-rated school district in the state of Texas a couple years ago. Now we're a B. But we have, we're making gains. The good news is now we have no D or F schools in the whole district. But we had 13,000 kids on the STAR test when you do the math, and the state doesn't report it to you like that. You have to go dig in and do some math. 13,000 kids who weren't even reading at the approaches level. So you're leaving 13,000 kids behind on the most basic fundamental right of school, which is that you're going to be literate, right? And now we have done some really good work in that area, and that came out of a committee led by Christine Kalmbach that I serve on, and Julie Hanneman also serves on. And we now monitor when kids leave not reading on level. Let's say you're a first grader, and Chris is in first grade, and you leave first grade not reading on level, but we promote you to second grade, because that happens. It's not really good for you to be held back. So now you're sitting in second grade, and guess what? I know that the board now gets a report every couple of months. We say, oh, Chris is sitting in second grade. He was at first grade third month. Now Chris has moved to first grade sixth month. Now Chris has read to first grade ninth month. So we're making sure we check your progress, and that's never been done before. So we had a hole in what we were really looking at. That's a fundamental piece of school. And that's actually not the fault of Cy-Fair or Scott, for sure. That's the way the state accountability system, the high-stakes accountability movement moved. But that's the kind of work when he's talking about, yes, I agree with him. In fact, I've really worked in committee, and at the dais, I always ask about the achievement gap, and I've been the one to push and push and push on literacy. So that is true. But I don't believe that I should have to check my religion at the door when I walk into a school. And I definitely don't think some kid who is there more than he's with his family should not be able to bring their faith with them. And I've done this well. Look, I've been a Christian my whole life, right? I was raised in a Christian household, even though my dad was Jewish and he converted to Christianity in his 20s. This was not offensive. This just made me an excellent person. Judeo-Christian values, when they are held, even countries that are not Christian, when they follow Judeo-Christian values, the people are happier, they're wealthier, and they're healthier. So I would want that kind of those values to be able to be brought into our school. And so they shouldn't have to be checked at the door. It shouldn't be agnostic. Everyone bring your faith. I've lived this. In fact, I was a principal in Spring Branch of a high school. A kid came to me asking if they could start a Christian club. So I had to really think through. And luckily, I'd never gotten those before. But that year, I got these rules about faith in school that came from the ad building. I think it was a law that passed. So I read the sheet and I said, sure, this is how you do it. You can get a sponsor. Then you bring it to me. You've got your club description, and then you can have the club. My student came wanting to ask to have a Muslim club. No problem. You get a sponsor. You write the description. I give the approval. You have your club. And so this is not, it's not to exclude any religion at school. And I don't think you'd get a report out of a single kiddo that I've ever served that thought that I felt anything different. But I served in love. But no one should have to check their faith and at the door.
Okay, well, we can go on and on. I mean, go ahead, please.
I do want to. There's something you asked me about earlier, and it's actually the closure to the corruption questioning story. So once I was falsely accused by my colleague and summoned to the administration building, I recorded that conversation that day, and I told my colleague I was going to record it because I couldn't believe I was summoned to there. It was
okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they're accusing me basically of a felony, and they're having me come.
For what?
Right, for the improper vendor relationships, when I just brought the weapons detection and said, hey, and the only other thing that I haven't said is that I had, once I'd met that person, I have a very good friend that I said, hey, you should go work with him. And so they wanted, and he's not my husband, he's not my sanguinity, there's no illegal relationship at all, but because he was going to get involved, they were saying, oh, improper vendor relationship. I asked him not to work on it, and he didn't. It moved away, and we still don't have that technology in our schools. But once I was falsely accused, I recorded that conversation that day.
Which conversation?
The one when they falsely accused me, I said, what in the world is
Who's
happening?
They?
The two colleagues that I got elected with.
Other school board members.
Correct.
You recorded a conversation with two other school board members.
Yes.
But you're doing it while there's an accusation on you of inappropriate vendor relationships.
Right. And even though in Texas it's totally legal for me to record on my own, in that conversation I said, you might want to get your recording device, your phone out, because I'm going to record this on my phone. Click.
And you told them that?
Yes. So then time has passed, and unfortunately, we'll learn. I'm a very nice person, and I like to get along.
So they made an issue of you recording that conversation?
No. It's another conversation. So basically, I just let it go because I want to get the reading done. I want to get the work of the school district done. We have a lot of work to do to make it the best place for every student, for families to have their rights, to get the books taken care of, to get the, right? So nice Natalie did that. But unfortunately, they started, now that the election got tricky, they started to throw it back out there. Scott had, this is what happened. We also took a chaplain vote. So the legislature required every board to take a vote on chaplains. I happen to think the idea of chaplains in schools is amazing. The reason I do is because we have suicide rates that are skyrocketing. We have kids, And in fact, unfortunately, between last school year and the last 2 school years, it's gone up still. Kids who have a plan and a means to commit suicide. And so we have sad kids. We have teachers who are so busy teaching with their academics, with the principal hiring teachers and parents, and the counselors have to make schedules. The counselors are very busy doing a lot of testing and counseling on college-going plans and, graduation plans. No one's actually there for the kids emotionally. And so I've seen it work with a volunteer in Booker T. Washington High School in HISD where I worked, and it really made a difference at that school. And so I know we didn't have it in the budget because we had a deficit budget, but we could have volunteers who would be willing to work as a chaplain. And we went sideways on that. My colleagues didn't vote for that, the same block of people that we've been talking about. That's when they started to operate in a block. I challenged them at the dais about it. I think it scared them. They realized I could be dangerous, and that's when they broke up and they decided they were going to take care of things. We never had an officers meeting. That's kind of bad leadership. We had an officers meeting. The last time we had one was discussing chaplains. We didn't have one again until this is where the recording conversation comes up. So we're talking years now. So this is the kind of level of leadership we have. We have to do a superintendent evaluation. That should be done in the officers, right? Officers should be discussing what's going to go on the agenda, should be discussing the vision for our district's going. We don't have a big picture right now. We're running scattered as a board with little pieces and parts here and there. And because the board is under this leadership right now, we're not integrated. But that person, after the chaplain vote, they started to falsely accuse me of making money off of chaplains. So now I was making money of weapons detections, and now I was making money off of chaplains. Whatever, I let it go until now when the precinct chairs did not choose my colleague, all the allegations started again. In the meantime, my colleague who falsely accused me has apologized, and I wanted to leave it there. God told me to forgive. But they didn't leave it there. Their wife went on as soon as they weren't chosen. And they tried to manipulate the Harris County. And in fact, you can see my colleague, his wife, and another precinct chair who runs a big Facebook page had given me glowing letters of recommendation for my reelection to the Harris County Republican Party until Scott didn't get picked by the precinct chairs. And I decided to run in that thing. Suddenly, I'm not a glowing, amazing conservative school board member anymore. And so basically, they started to falsely accuse me again. And that's not okay. And so I was invited. I was in the grocery store, got a phone call from the wife of that colleague and another precinct chair that has a big Facebook page. I've never met with her. I know I've been falsely accused, but I'd never even met the other person in person. But they would call me in the grocery store to ask about the curriculum because I mentioned House Bill 1605 the night before, which checks that now the state never checked our curriculum for appropriateness. It just checked if it taught the TEKS. And so there was a new law passed out of the State Board of Ed. And so they were asking about that. I was confused. I said, hey, I'm in the grocery store. Why don't we just meet for coffee? And of course I recorded it. These are the people who falsely accused me. And that person told me that her husband lied. And so I taped the conversation. And I'd also learned about very bad behavior at a conference by some of my colleagues. And I don't really want to get into it because there's a female person that might have been harmed in the situation, and I'm not sure if that was really properly cared for. But anyway, so I was just beyond myself to think that this is how my colleagues are behaving. This is the poor leadership we have. And I expressed one word that was very derogatory about the behavior, and then I went, oh, I meant to say. But other than that, on that tape, the big secret is that they admit who put him up to it. On the tape. What does
that mean? They admit they put him up to it.
Why was I falsely accused? I could not figure it out. And then they told me that I don't want to, if I say it, might take it out of being able to sue. And whoever's inappropriate, if you could imagine, who are the two parties that operate in a school district, right? And so I just want you to know, someone put them up to that, and it was admitted on that recording. And so we've never had an officers meeting, but suddenly, because I used a derogatory term about my colleagues with someone with a big Facebook page, I was suddenly summoned and I got to have an officers meeting. I thought it was because we needed to do the superintendent evaluation. Nope. There are two men. One's the president, one's the secretary. So Scott Henry and Justin Ray are the only two people I told. Justin said, you called us the name to a person with a big Facebook page. And I said, I don't remember doing that. If I did, I will apologize. That's inappropriate. But isn't this rich that we're having a officers meeting finally because you don't like that I called you a word? And so I've asked you for officers meeting, Scott. I've asked many times for officers meeting, Scott, correct? And so Then there was another issue that's completely inappropriate, which I'll definitely not mention here, that he asked me about as well. And unfortunately, the facts were on my side. They thought they were defending, like why I was making false allegations, but I wasn't. The facts are there. And that is when I said, I said, let's call this person and ask if I said that. They said, no. And then I said, well, that's okay, because I recorded the conversation and I can go back and listen. And if I did, and that's where it blew up. So my colleagues are the only ones who knew about the recording, and they took it to the cheapest rag they could and other liberal rags because I challenged Scott because he didn't get selected by the precinct chairs. And I liked
He didn't
the
get
team.
for what position?
He did not get selected to be 3 people to run that the precinct chairs and the Harris County Republican Party would get behind. He did not get the nod.
So the
'cause they
precinct
didn't
chairs
like
are
it.
also endorsing you.
Yes.
Everyone, we have them all.
Okay.
And 2 amazing colleagues. And I do want to mention their names because the reason I really took this on, this harder lane, I mean, I'm crazy to take it on, but I'm just either here to do good work because God wants me to, or I can go on. And guess what? I got plenty of things I could do with my 40, 50 hours a week. But guess what? The precinct chairs spoke, and they spoke resoundingly. And one of the people on the one is George Edwards, who's amazing. George was the one who got a split vote last time. George is a CPA. George was on the board before the board got tamed by TASB, right? So he knows what it looks like to be a Saturday, have a workshop where you're looking at the data. Oh, these kids aren't reading at this school. What can we do about it over here? And when they also had a portrait of a graduate where they're really thinking about the character of the kids and not just a testing culture where we pass the test and that's what matters. So George is magical in that way. And he's a CPA. When we do this audit situation, George brings an expertise for us to be able to get to the bottom of our budget situation. Then the secret horse that came from the somewhere is Raydell Walker. I know schools backwards and forwards, but I never worked in Cy-Fair ISD. Raydell has worked in our schools as she has been a bus driver, a paraprofessional, a teacher, and an assistant principal in our middle schools and high schools. She knows our system so well that to me, this is a very, very, very good way for us to get really good decision-making with knowledge of how it operates in the school. So she didn't have as strong of a record. I've been at the dais for 4 years, and so I felt like I'd be better in the slot against Scott to get us those 3 because the 3 of us can make a difference in the school district. I promise you it's amazing. It is an amazing school district. But this kind of bad behavior and this kind of poor leadership on the board, no. The district deserves a board that's getting the work done for the kids and none of this nonsense. And so they want to act like I'm nonsense. I'm not. I'm about the work for the kids. And I feel very optimistic about the future. I think we're going to win this election, and I think we're going to be, you wait to see, it's going to be a city on a hill. This is an amazing school district, and we need that. The U.S. Department of Ed is going away. And there's not going to be, Texas needs to lead the way. Texas education can lead the way, and our district is positioned to not be tamed and not be controlled, but to do the work together. And so that's why I'm passionate about it, and so taking the arrows and the slings,
Okay.
but it's worth it.
Very good. I got to finish up here, and I got to give Sandra the chance. I told Sandra that we got a text regarding her as well, and I just want to I want her to give her a chance to defend herself. But essentially, again, when this show got announced that I was having you 2 on, I started getting inboxed with all this stuff. Let you defend yourself. But the text against Sandra says that that you sued precinct chairs using your son because of racism, and that you brag about your family being involved in the cartel.
Wow.
That's what
I don't even know where to begin.
Uh-huh.
I guess I should start with a thank you. I'm actually flattered that they couldn't find anything in my background that they needed to invent the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
None of it is true. I have never in my life sued a single person. So whoever texted that, you should ask him for proof. As far as my son suing people, well, he is a lawyer, but he's a labor and employment lawyer. So it's kind of tough to do that one. And then the cartel, well, we're a military family. Let me think. I'm not even sure. Is it because I'm Mexican that I'm supposed to be cartel? Well, I was born in the United States, so I'm not even sure where any of those lies are coming. But I'm really flattered. Thank you for the opportunity to clear it up.
Wow.
Well, I wanted to give you that chance. And I'm just going to say it again. I mean, I think that you ladies are really you're really a threat to the establishment.
Absolutely.
And that, you know, I know that when that's the case, that grand things get said about people.
Yeah.
So I wanted to give you both a chance. And I think it's
Thank
good that I'm
you.
getting these texts because it means that, you know, you really are.
People are listening.
Yeah, right.
You're
right.
welcome, Chris.
And the kids are worth it. Come on.
Yeah.
They
Yep.
absolutely are.
Well,
Yeah.
we've gone over. I think that the issues in your school district are so deep that, I mean, we went over on time and we still didn't get to the bottom of it. But
Yeah.
we do have to finish up here. So I appreciate both your times. Natalie, tell us where we can learn more about your campaign.
Natalie for CFISD.com is my webpage. You can go to Facebook and look up either me, Natalie Blasingame, or you can go, there's a personal page and also one that's Natalie School Board Trustee and Natalie Blasingame School Board Trustee. You can go to X, you can go to Instagram. But really, most of the information can be found at the website and Facebook.
Excellent. Very good. And Sandra, tell us where we can learn about the Cypress Republicans.
CypressRepublicans.com. We have luncheons once a month, the second Thursday of the month.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah.
Let me know about that. I want to go.
It's this coming Thursday in a couple of days.
Cool.
Yeah.
Count me
Yep,
in.
and then I want to mention NRG. We are a slate. I am telling you, I took slings and arrows so I could get these amazing people there to the board with me to do amazing work. Riddell is amazing, and George is amazing. So we are NRG, Natalie, Riddell, and George. George Edwards, Riddell Walker, Natalie Blasingame. We're 3 on the ballot. We all drew number 3, so it's very easy. People just go down and go 3, 3, 3. And I hope people will show up on Election Day because we do need the support. We need every person who this resonated with. Everyone who says it's okay to have Christian faith. Everyone who says we definitely want kids to read in our school district. Everyone who says let's make sure there's no corruption and waste. Everyone who feels that way, please show up because it's going to be it's only the school board election and our 17 amendments. And so we need every last person who this resonates with to please, please, please come vote and bring your neighbors.
Okay. And we went so late here that I'm texting my wife telling her how soon I'll be home.
Sorry.
Guys, appreciate you both. And
Thank
this is
you.
Chris Heasley with the Chris Heasley Radio Show. We will be back next Saturday with one more hot topic. Have a great week.
Woo,
Thank
hot
you.
topics. Thank you, Chris.